You know, the great thing about the car right now is we have a built-in trash can. Yep, I missed it. A built-in trash can right there. Yep, that works pretty good. Goes right in the garbage. You know, the good thing is when I drop it in there, then Sam comes along and picks it up.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoatings. On this episode of Sam's Garage, Sam and Kevin install a new pedal assembly and dipstick tube from Low Car Performance on the Jeep Rock Crawler. Then Sam and Doug complete the brakes on the Alpha 1 GTO with a new master cylinder and full system bleed. Dave from Brothers Truck Parts makes a special appearance to install a new steering column and wheel in this 69 C10 truck. To wrap things up, Sam adds some much-needing stopping power to the front of his 67 Cadillac DeVille. Sam and Kevin get ready to install a throttle pedal assembly and transmission oil dipstick from Low Car Performance. The pedal assembly supports drive-by-wire, which is perfect for this application. The dipstick kit makes it super easy to check your fluid levels whenever you need.
This week we're going to be talking about pedals and oil dipsticks. Now, Low Car has a whole variety of pedals for your muscle cars, classic cars, and there's been a lot of conversions from carburetors to Sniper EFIs out there. And just because you can connect the rod that goes from the pedal factory to the linkage doesn't make it correct. You really need to go with the Low Car pedal, bracket, and cable to get that up-to-date feel.
An alternative to that is our drive-by-wire system. In this application, I'm actually using a combination of different parts that we offer. This pedal that Sam was showing us is actually from our Clayton Machine Works line. This pad is from our Goolsby Select Edition. And I thought they'd made a pretty cool combination to go with this Jeep and with our CMW drive-by-wire pedal. With that being said, I won't need the upper arm and the mounting shaft that's for a 69 Camaro. All of these drive-by-wire pedals we offer, you buy the head unit for your application, and then you buy the arm and pad that you want to go with it. That'll include an adapter, which is splined, which allows you the adjustability of the angle of the pedal. So if you're not comfortable with it here, or you need to be up higher or lower, you can simply index it, and then you can secure it with the bolt and washer. I mean, these are two really simple, short projects that are, if you just measure right and plan it, they'll work well.
Works a lot better now. I've been using your other tubes that are standalone for 20 years, but this right here, I remember seeing it at SEMA, and it is nice.
Yeah, we do a variety of different dipsticks. We have locking dipsticks, and this is just the newest thing, and this is just like everything else, R&D, and it's ready to go.
Man, that looks good, and it's gonna work good. Keeping them both in one spot really makes it nice. Now, anytime you guys are working with O-rings, To make it easy on you, always lube an O-ring when you're working with it, installing them or anything, so they don't bind and tear.
Yeah, you don't want to have any leaks. You're not going to get any at the top, but it's going to get sticky over time if it dries out, so it's a good idea.
And one way you guys can measure your sticks, like when it's going down here from the flange down, measure from here to there with the stick all the way down into the tube and get to your full mark. Then you can very easily transfer that measurement from this flange over to the stick, but you also have instructions in the packaging, right?
Yeah, if you don't have a factory dipstick, we're definitely not going to leave you hanging.
Yeah.
You'll know where to go. I'm going to send you a black set for your Cadillac.
I can't wait.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug finished the brakes on the Alpha 1 GTO by installing a new master cylinder and bleeding the entire system. The brake system on this car has gone a long way since the project first started. All of these upgrades will ensure that the car stops as fast as it looks.
Doug and I have already replaced all the brake system on this GTO project. What we're going to do next, and you don't want to skip this step, is going to be the master cylinder. In our case, this is original to the car since 1978.
Yeah, so it's real important to be able to do it. We're also going to go ahead and put in a proportioning valve so we can make sure the brake bias between the front and the rear are correct. You don't want the rears to lock up before the front. You want everything to work together.
Yep, this is going to be very easy. Make sure you guys use a line wrench. This is a direct replacement unit from Willwood for the Nissan chassis, so it's going to work out really great. Whenever you guys are working on a brake system or even a hydraulic clutch system, they're going to take brake fluid. Brake fluid is very corrosive when it touches paint, so make sure you cover anything up that you may get exposed to brake fluid, and if you get it on there, wipe it off really fast and you should be okay.
Make sure you're using a line wrench onto it. You can see the gap into it. What that'll allow you to do is to go right around that line. If you use just a standard wrench, you stand a real good chance of rolling your edges, and then you're going to have some real difficulties trying to take it off. What Sam's going to do with the bench bleeding, it'll really help you out. You go ahead and put brake fluid into it, and then you go ahead and bleed your master cylinder ahead of time before you do the lines, and that'll save you a lot of time. Otherwise, what happens is you're putting fluid into the master cylinder and you're trying to bleed the whole system at once, and you've got to go ahead and pump it all the way down. You've got a piston moving down a cylinder, and you want to just pre-fill everything and then bleed it first, then put it in, and it makes bleeding the system go much faster and easier. Okay, what we're getting ready to do right now is to bleed the brake. So what Sam's going to be doing is watching the amount of brake fluid that's in the bowl. And so I'm going to be adding pressure to it. So I'm going to be pumping the brake. And as I pump the brake, then I'm going to hold it down. And then Sam's going to crack the valve. And then he's going to close the valve. And then I'm going to go ahead and then do another couple pumps. And then I'll hold it back all the way down. And we're wanting to bleed all of the air out of the system. And it's important you always start with the line that's farthest away in the back and then work your way forward.
There is vacuum pumps out there you can hook up to air and suck the fluid through. If you didn't have a bench bleeding kit, that's something I highly recommend because it'll cut your bleeding in half. But I always recommend at the end you do one manual pumping like we do here because it just at the end works better. Well, Doug, you know, this isn't a very difficult job, but it's always a time-consuming job. When you install suspension upgrades or a brake upgrade, you really got to think things through, do it right, do it once.
No, I agree, Sam, and I'm so satisfied with everything that we've done here. I mean, with the coilover suspension, we're able to go ahead and dial in the spring rates, the ride heights onto it. We have full adjustability in the A-arms, the large brakes. I mean, everything about this build, it looks fantastic. You know, years ago, I was coming down a hill, coming real hard, got into the brakes and I started to lose them. I don't need to worry about any of those things happening on this vehicle. I mean, I'm really, really satisfied with what we've done.
The good thing is that everything we installed is purpose-built. We got thrust angle adjustment in the back, camber caster adjustment in the front, toe, everything. So you can really set this thing up on the racetrack for yourself.
Yeah, and for you guys at home, when you're doing a build like this, remember, think your way all the way through the car. If you're putting a lot more power onto it, make sure you're building the proper suspension and the proper brakes. The last thing you want to do is get yourself into of trouble. Make sure whatever you're doing, make sure you're doing it safe.
Absolutely. If you guys are building yourself a project, make sure that you don't build a street car for the racetrack and a race car for the streets.
Now back to more Sam's Garage. Dave from Brothers Truck Parts helped Sam install a new steering column and wheel in this classic 69 C10 Chevy pickup. The original steering column was way past due for an upgrade. Fortunately, the guys at Brothers Truck Parts have everything you would ever need for your classic truck.
We got Tommy's 1969 Chevy C10 in the shop. I've also got Dave from Brothers Trucks. He's the product specialist for Brothers, also here to help me install all the parts that Tommy's purchased. Now, he couldn't find anybody to install these parts, so we're going to go ahead and do it for him. I'm going to have Dave install the steering column while I go ahead and unbox the rest of the parts.
Now let's take a look at everything that comes with our tilt column from Brothers Trucks. We got our nut and bolt right here to attach our shift lever. We've got our gasket, we've got the bracket that goes behind it, we've got our neutral safety switch and backup light switch. We've got our gasket that goes at the dash, and then we've got brand new chrome handles and the necessary parts to go ahead and install it. We've got gear selector, and this is two different ones. So if you got a 350 or 400, this will be the guy that you use right here. And then if you've got an overdrive transmission, such as a 700R, then this comes with it too. So you don't have to fabricate anything. It already comes for regular and upgraded transmissions. This is the housing that is going to be for that right there. So I'm going to do a little bit of prep work on this, and then I'm going to go ahead and install it. So I like to remove this right here first. I've already loosened it up to save myself some time. And the reason I loosen that one up first is because I'm going to be taking out these bolts here too. I want to be able to get my steering column enough room to be moving around. Okay, now I've got everything disconnected properly. I should just be able to give this a reasonable tug and have it come apart. Sometimes it's going to be rusted and give you some trouble. Sometimes you'll need a buddy in front helping you. But don't get too aggressive because you might do damage up in what. So this is looking really easy for us here. Now what we're going to be doing is taking the steering column and having our shifter go straight up. And I'll show you why in just a second. The reason you're going to be taking your shifter arm and moving it up is because the shifter arm at the bottom is also going to move up, and that's going to allow you to take it out of the oblong hole there. Now I want you to take a look at these ends right here. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be pulling those ends back a little bit in order to get these little steps past those and when you take them out. And when you're grabbing these, don't grab by the wires because you can upset your connections here. Not so much worried about the old piece I'm taking out, but the new piece that I'm leaving in.
Dave, that steering column looks awesome in that truck, and I love the fact that you added a tilt to it.
Right.
And that old school steering wheel looks period correct in this truck. That newer one he had in there looked really horrible.
No, you can't mix years that wildly and expect it to match.
For sure. Now, do you have any tips for the people that might be doing this in their garage?
Yeah, so, make sure you disconnect your battery when you're doing anything electrical. I like to get tape on that stuff because we don't want to scratch up that pretty paint. And remember to get all of your peripherals at the same time. So you're going to make sure you're ordering the steering wheel, the horn button. You're going to get under there, do it once, get it done, order everything up, think your project through, and you'll be fine.
And with that new steering column, Tommy picked up an instrument cluster as well. And since he's got an LS swap already running the GM computer, this instrument cluster that Brothers has a DLC connector, making installation easy and accurate. Can't wait to install it.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam's 67 DeVille is back to receive more stopping power upgrades. Originally, this car came with front drum brakes. Sam will be converting the drum brakes to disc brakes with a conversion kit from OPGI.
So exciting to have my 67 Cadillac DeVille out of the body shop. It is in black primer right now. We're going to be doing a wrap on this vehicle. If you remember last season, we pro-charged this car and we installed nitrous with Nitrous Express. It's got an LS3 fully cammed with a 4L80 behind it. Should make about 800 horsepower to the crank. Now with that much horsepower, we're going to need stopping power and we're going to have to stiffen up the suspension a little bit. First, we're going to start with front and rear brake conversion. And who else would I go to for those parts than OPGI? They're going to have brake parts, front and rear conversion for my Cadillac. That's right. You guys probably know them to have restoration parts for your Cadillac, Buick, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, or Chevy. But they also have high performance parts for those vehicles as well, like this 67 sedan DeVille. Who would have thought there would have been 13-inch rotors up front with twin piston calipers and 11-inch rotors in the rear? That's going to have some serious stopping power for this big, heavy boat. Let's get started. Believe it or not, this Cadillac is very, very well built. And sometimes it's better to keep the stock parts, if they're still good with integrity, than to go aftermarket. And at the back side of the bearing, you want to pack it until you see the grease coming out of the roller. If you notice, on the front surface of this hub is going to be a packing sticker. Anytime you're putting rotors, brake parts together, and you have a sticker that's on the surface of the hub or the rotor, you want to make sure to take those stickers off because it'll create a runout, which in turn will create vibration when you hit the brakes. So you just take a razor blade and take that sticker off. You're probably thinking, how much could that sticker do as far as damage? And it will. So this is where you want to take a little bit of debris away from where you're working. This is a 50, 60 plus year car. And there's going to be some debris. The ball joint's in good shape. There's no reason to replace it. Now we're ready to install our hub. Seal goes over the portion on the spindle. I personally like to take a small amount of grease. That way we know there is plenty of grease inside there. And whenever you're doing this portion of the installation, you want to make sure that you don't use any tools on the nut itself. You want to make sure to pack the bearing, but then back it off so that you don't have any bind and the hub spins good. As far as the caliper goes, you want to make sure that the bleeder is on the highest point of that direction of the car that you're installing it on. In this particular case, we have a bleeder on both sides. So you really can't make that mistake that some people make. If you do make that mistake, what happens is that you'll never be able to bleed the brake system because the air travels to the top. And you're going to sit there and try to bleed all day, and you're going to come up with a mushy pedal. That's when you got to go and make sure that the orientation of your bleeder valves are correct. As you can see now, I got my caliper installed. Now you want to make sure that after you tighten it all down that you have good clearance between the rotor, the body of the caliper, and the pads. Then once you've bled the brakes and you've introduced the pads to the rotor, double check again and make sure you have no binding or scraping. Also, you want to check and make sure that these slides are greased. They do come greased from the factory. If they're not in your case or you're doing a brake job, make sure you use a synthetic grease that goes into the slides, clean them off first and lubricate them good. That's going to keep everything nice and even. All I got to do now is install my brake line and bleed the brakes. Let's go on to the back.